Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call our meeting to order. This is our Meet the Candidates night. But before we get into the key subject matter, we're going to do some housekeeping. At the back of the room, we've laid out some sign-up sheets. We're seeking volunteers to assist with working at the polls on the 23rd and to collect signatures on our nominating petitions. We've also put out some index cards for you to write your questions down for any of the candidates, or all of the candidates, I should say. And we'll give you another opportunity with the questions after the candidates make their opening remarks. Some housekeeping matters that we will start with, and I'm going to ask our secretary, Toby Clarnett, to read the resolutions that we will be voting on tonight.
Hi, my name is Toby Clarnett. There are three resolutions here. The first of which is the resolution to cast ballot for the Executive Committee of the People's Caucus. Resolved that the Secretary shall be directed to cast one vote for nominees Aaron B. Stern, Chair, Brian Zerman, Vice Chair, Louis Linder, Treasurer, and Toby Clarnett, Secretary, to serve as the caucus's Executive Committee for one-year terms commencing April 1st, 2013. I ask for a motion. David Venditti. Do I have a second? And Susan Code seconds. Thank you very much. Hold on. I can't write that fast. Okay, our second. Pardon me? Just what? Okay, just read the whole thing, right, though? This. Okay. Now I need to take a vote on that first resolution that I just read. All those in favor? Pass and nay? Okay. Passes unanimously. Second motion? That's it? Second one, the resolution? Okay. The second resolution reads, resolved that the Secretary shall be directed to cast one vote for each of the uncontested nominees for two-year terms, William J. Vescio, Mayor, Lori A. Sullivan, that's L-O-R-I-A Sullivan, for trustee, Mark L. Wilson, trustee, for the caucus's endorsement in the village election of March 19th, 2013. Do I have a motion to pass? Huh? Mark Pohar. And do I have a second? And David Venditti again. And do I? All in favor? I'm not used to this. And all against? Unanimously. And the third resolution is to amend the bylaws. Resolved that the section of the caucus's bylaws, quote, vacancy in executive committee, end quote, shall be amended to read, quote, for a term to expire on the 1st of April. Do I have a motion to pass? And your name, I'm sorry. Joan. Thank you, Joan. And a second. Do I have a second? Thank you. What? Oh, do you want to clarify what this? What you?
And thank you again, Keith, our expert on Robert's Rules of Order here. This amendment is correcting a technical error that existed in the bylaws the last time they were amended, which would have resulted in a person who was appointed by the nominating committee of the executive committee to fill a vacant position having their term end at this meeting rather than end at the date of the parties who were elected taking the next office. So we should have done that before we took the vote, but I apologize for that as well. I'm consistent, at least. So, all right. That was number 6 if you're keeping count. So the next item on our agenda is to.
We have stuff to vote on.
You didn't take the vote. Yes. Okay. All in favor? Ayes, please. Any opposed? It's unanimous. Next item on our agenda is to advise of the special voting meeting, which will take place on January 23rd at the Village Youth Center behind the municipal building. That election is required because we have 2 candidates for the position of village justice who were nominated at our meeting on January 9th, Howard Code and Laurie, Lauriei Sullivan. So hopefully we'll keep names straight, and there'll only be one Sullivan on the ballot, so that should be easy for us. At that meeting, we will be using paper ballots, and we will seek volunteers. Hopefully some of you tonight will volunteer to act as poll workers who will check people in, compare their signatures against the poll registers, keep track of the ballots that they're given, and assist them in answering any questions that they may have. And at the end of the evening, participate with our tellers in opening absentee ballots, recording them, and helping to keep a tally. So if anybody is willing to volunteer, the time slots will be 2 hours each from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. And you will have books in front of you that list the persons who are eligible to vote that have been recorded by the Board of Elections, and you can obtain signatures and compare to those. Anyone who has not registered to vote but is eligible to vote will also be checked in, and we can verify their eligibility by their addresses in the village. So there will be a listing of that as well. So anybody willing to do that, please give us your name, address, and telephone numbers so we can make sure to contact you and assign the times. And the second thing is to ask for those who are willing to collect petition signatures on our nominating petitions. Hopefully each of the candidates will do some as well. The executive committee will do it, and we could use a few more volunteers. We have to collect 100 signatures that have to be valid signatures from those who are eligible to vote. And we always attempt to collect at least 150 signatures. Last year, we collected a little over 200, and that's a safe number. There are always errors made. Some people get them signed at their Super Bowl parties by non-residents or others, and some people sign multiple times, and we have to strike the extra signatures. So we try to be very cautious with this and make sure that they're not challenged. At this point, I would like to open the floor to the candidates to make an opening presentation. Any subject they'd like to talk about. Hopefully, since we do not have a contested election for the 3 village office positions other than justice, we can run this as an opening statement, then questions that have been submitted to us by residents already. And each candidate will have 2 minutes for their opening. We'll also have 1.5 to 2 minutes, very loose, when they answer questions. And if they choose to have a reply on the questions, they can do that as well. And then at the end, we'll wrap it up with a brief closing statement if the candidates choose to do so. So I'd like to start with Mayor Vescio. And for the first round of questions, we'll just move down the line. Mayor Vescio, Trustee Sullivan, and Trustee Candidate Wilson. And after that, we will go to the village justices, Mr. Code and the other Mrs. Sullivan.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the caucus. I want to thank the caucus executive committee again and the residents who support our 110-year-old tradition of caucus. No written speeches tonight, just ad-libbing it. You all know what we've done over the last 8 years, and hopefully we will continue to do what we have done to preserve the village, increase services, keep the quality of services, keep taxes at bay. I did mention last time when I did give an opening speech that there are certain things that we as a board, and myself in particular, want to finish up over the next 2 years. One of them was to finish the community room, which is something that the board envisioned when we put the library bond out for vote, which passed for the first time in many, many years. Twice before it had failed. And one of the selling points of that was to have a community room. We're well underway with that. We have plans being developed, the final stages. It'll be put out for bid in April. It's going to be a capacity of about 80 people downstairs. There'll be a gallery upstairs open. There'll be walls for putting paintings and displays up. And there'll be a reading room upstairs. Downstairs, there'll be a little kitchen, storage, and it'll be truly for the community, which we don't have to use in the future. We've already done the demolition of the asbestos removal. We've already installed new doors and windows. If you go by there, you'll look, and the doors and windows look great, cleaning up the outside. So that's one of the things that we want to focus on doing, make sure we keep those costs at bay and minimize it. The Friends of the Library are going to help with those costs, defray those costs, and minimize the tax impacts to the village. We also, as you know, have a shortage of fields throughout Westchester. We've already renovated the field at Lynn McCrum Field. We had some drainage issues there. It's been years since that was upgraded. We did some maintenance there, and it's working very well. We brought online the field at the club, which is a soccer field, that we actually got the state to approve the developer building that ahead of time. They're not supposed to do any development or pay us any monies that they owe us or will owe us until they break ground. And they can't break ground under state law until they have 50% of units with deposits on them. They're not there. We got them to build that field for us 2 years ago. We put it in service, and we are maintaining our assets with the fields. Our last remaining major field that needs renovation, besides Neighborhood Park, which is maintained, it's a smaller field, is Chilmark. It has never been renovated since the time it was purchased, when it was Chilmark Country Club. We have plans developed for that. We developed it 6 years ago. We put them at bay with the water project and everything else that was going on. We're going to renovate that and bring that field online, new tennis courts, new ball fields, restroom facility. The existing building that's up there is falling apart. It will be demolished this year. We've ceased using it. We've moved the rec department down into the basement of the library. We renovated that. So that building will be demolished. There had been rumors that we're selling that building and that plot. That is not true. That is dedicated park land and is not for sale, and will be utilized in the development of that park. Once we have that park redeveloped, we will have 3 gems in our village for recreational use, for both adult recreation as well as our youth sports, which are expanding all the time. We also continue to upgrade our fleets, our equipment, fire trucks, police vehicles, and DPW vehicles, some of which were almost 30 years old. We're going to look to find new paths to continue to reduce taxes and to keep the village of Briarcliff in excellent economic conditions. We are one of the only villages, towns, to have our bond rating increased during these economic times, and that's kudos to the staff and the board's oversight. And lastly, we've been talking about this for years. We would like to become a coterminous town village and shed the town of Austin and town of Mount Pleasant. As you know, 90% of the town of Austin is within, at Briarcliff is within the town of Austin. They provide no services to us. We pay 38% of the town tax burden, and we're 22% of the population. The only thing they provide for us is they assess us taxes and they collect taxes. We provide services to them. We provide fire protection through an agreement and also some mutual aid. We'll talk about it later, but there is a group in that unincorporated area that have asked to be annexed into Briarcliff, and we'll discuss that later on. But it's one of the things that we want to do because we feel that we are independent and we do serve our village residents better than the town. They do nothing for us, so we would like to become a coterminous town village. So with that, I would thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Nucio. Trustee Sullivan, would you be kind enough to give your opening?
Thank you. There's not much more I can say. You took everything. So I did have a prepared speech that I'm not going to read. How's that? Because it's redundant. But first of all, I'd like to, I was not here last week, and I'd like to thank Frank Frietta for nominating me last week and Carrie Pohar for seconding. And equally important, Sarah Vesio, who we refer to as Lady Sarah, for accepting the nomination on my behalf. I'd also like to thank the caucus and all the residents for understanding that I couldn't be here last week, and if there's anything I could have done, I would have been here. The importance of the caucus as a nonpartisan process affords all of us as residents the opportunity to be a part of the village administration, where if we were if there were party politics, many of us would not have that opportunity. We are able to be a part of our administration without any political agenda. That the People's Caucus is a nonpartisan party in Briarcliff makes Briarcliff very unique, and it gives us all a great opportunity. Also unique to our village this year is that the caucus election, as is pointed out, has 2 Laurie Sullivans. I think this is probably the first for the village. I'm Laurie Sullivan, that has served as your trustee for 2 terms and are now seeking a 3rd term. The other Laurie Sullivan, as we are often confused and referred to, is our acting village justice. During the course of my 2 terms, we had the opportunity to appoint an acting village justice, and with the various, with Laurie's qualifications, I was very pleased to be able to add a woman to our judiciary. I also think that that is also the first time in Briarcliff there's been a woman justice. I'd like to thank the caucus and the executive committee. I told you I wasn't reading the speech, so I'm going to move on, for hosting tonight and for trying all year long to re-energize the People's Caucus. We saw members of the caucus at all sorts of community events this year trying to get re-energized and get the caucus back to the important status that it holds in our village. Having served as your trustee for the past 4 years, I've had the honor of working with some of the finest people who devote countless thankless hours and their free time to steer our village in the right direction. We as a board, the mayor and each of the trustees, serve as a team for our village. As a team, we often have differing opinions. At times there's friction and dissent. But as a board, we hash things out and wrestle tirelessly through our issues to come up with what we believe is right for the village of Briarcliff. Nothing to do with our personal views. I'd like to thank Bill, Dave, Mark, and Bob. It's been an honor serving with you the past 4 years. I know that last week Mayor Vesio explained to everybody that the role that he saw himself as mayor, and we as a board as a navigator. I like to see our role I'd like to see my role as being part of a team, the team being the mayor and the trustees, where we set policy for the village and we're the guardian of the village's finances. We as a board retain oversight responsibility of our village manager, who's responsible to execute our policies and directives and steer our village along both day to day, as well as implement any policies that we want to see put in place. Recognizing the importance of our village manager, and we have one that has the knowledge and foresight of running a municipality while navigating the municipal waters. Bill and Dave were able to bring Phil Zagarelli to our village, and we all should be very thankful for that. I had the pleasure of being new to the board right when Phil was new to the village. So we both were able to learn the ways of the village together to a certain extent. Following what Mayor Vesio said, during the past 4 years, we have, as a board, with Phil as our driver to a certain extent, we've been able to increase our bond rating from A1 to AA2, and we're in the process of being evaluated and hoping we will wind up being a AA1, have a AA1 bond rating. This is in spite of the economic downturns. We've completed our full water supply, turned on our water, and we as a village have an independent water source now. We've created a financially lean administration without sacrificing our services, and we've increased all of our programs. We've continued to do everything we can to look for increased sources of revenue, to decrease the tax burden to fund our services, and we've always been able to keep our tax growth well under 2%, long before it became a tax cap state mandated by the state. It's been my honor to serve you as trustee for the past 4 years. I've been a resident of the village, for anyone that doesn't know me, for 15 years, practicing attorney for 25 years, and a wife and a mother that I think all put together allows me to be qualified to continue as your trustee. There's many things, as Mayor Vescio said, that we have in the works, and we're very committed to continuing forward with and see to completion, hopefully, within the next couple of years. And I want to say, well, the pay is not great. I think each of us got a golf shirt once. And I think we got one twice because we didn't like the color the first time. Is that right? It was changed to navy blue. The real joy of doing this and the fun of it, and even though it takes many hours, is seeing the growth and the development of Briarcliff and the pride the residents have in it. And it makes it all worth it to give the time. And I thank you for letting me have these past 2 terms, and I look forward to serving you again.
Thank you, Trustee Sullivan, both for your service and participation on the team that Bill has led all these years, and we look forward to your continued service.
Thank you.
And now for our candidate for trustee, Mark Wilson, who doesn't have the advantage of having served in village office for the last few years, so he's probably a little bit more nervous than the others, but I'm sure he's a qualified player, and he's a team player as well, so let's hear what he has to say.
Thank you. Thank you to the Executive Committee and also to everyone that's turned out this evening and whoever may at some point be watching this on videotape. I will deliver an opening speech, which is similar to the one last week, so apologies to anyone who has heard this before. Over 20 years ago, Denise and I searched for the ideal place to raise our family, which had just increased by 50% with the arrival of Ryan, thereby making our one-bedroom New York City apartment way too small for our future. With family on Long Island and in New Jersey, we were aware of the many choices for suburban living in the New York metropolitan area. We focused on Westchester, with its charming villages, good commuting times to Midtown, top-notch schools, and proximity to our family on Long Island. We selected Briarcliff as it appeared to offer the perfect fit for us. We have been delighted with that choice ever since. Over the years, we have participated in many of the school's social and athletic aspects of the Briarcliff community. I have always been struck by the exceptional volunteerism demonstrated by village residents in all of these areas, encompassing both their time and their money. They typically serve the greater good without seeking or receiving much notoriety. Their reward is a job well done to the benefit of the Briarcliff community. It is in that same spirit of stewardship and service that I seek your support as a candidate for village trustee. As a chief financial officer and CPA with over 30 years of business experience, I believe that I bring strong analytical and governance skills to the trustee position, as well as a track record of volunteerism within and outside of the village. From coaching basketball, baseball, and floor hockey, plus Cub Scouts, I have hopefully instilled a sense of teamwork and sportsmanship in a few of our young athletes. I fondly recall timing the swimmers on the pool deck and writing articles for the Gazette, anonymously, of course. Our children thrived in the recreation department programs, and our son was a lifeguard and also a swim team coach. I know the value that these programs provide to the youth of our community, both as participants and as teenage employment. Lastly, as a village trustee, I believe that it is important to have both an educated and open mind when addressing issues and discharging the duties of a trustee. I believe that it is important to continue and build upon the village's good relationships with adjacent and overlapping government entities. Also, in these tough economic times, it is vitally important to maintain the village's prudent financial practices with respect to both operations and capital projects, as has been demonstrated over the last several years. Lastly, I believe that a village trustee has a stewardship role to ensure that the unique characteristics of Briarcliff are preserved and enhance for both current and future residents of the village. Thank you, and I seek your support.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson, and I'm glad to have you on board, and I hope that the current administration will work you right into things, and I know you're energetic and will help every way you can.
Absolutely.
Mr. Code, you get the honor to have the opening statement first, and welcome.
Thank you. And I also would like to join in thanking the Executive Board for keeping the caucus alive, and I thank the people who have come out today on this fairly miserable evening to be here. I spoke to you last week, I think, and I explained why I wanted to be your judge. I believe that the village judgeship is an important position in this village. A lot of people think of the village court as the place where they go for their speeding tickets or their parking tickets or making the left turn off 9A onto Pleasantville Road. And that is part of it, but a lot of people don't realize the importance of the court, of a village court. The village court, and I learned this after being your village, acting village justice for 9 years, is a lot more than that. It involves a criminal jurisdiction of misdemeanors and other matters. It involves family court matters. It involves small claims cases, and much to my pleasure a few years ago, it involves marrying people. I actually got to do that once, and it was to my great enjoyment. I won't take a lot of time. You never want to put a microphone in front of a lawyer, you know. It never works out well. But I look forward to the challenge and the opportunity of being your village judge, and I ask for your vote. I think it would be a wonderful opportunity for me to use my experience, my previous 9 years as your acting village judge, my years practicing law, and I would ask for your vote because I think it's a good challenge, and I'd look forward to it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Code, and I hope you will forgive me for the statement I'm about to make. When you become, or if you become village justice, say it. Will there be a change in the code, the village code? I'm sorry, I just couldn't resist. I'm sure. I never said I was good. Well, Laurie, your turn has finally come, and I'll repeat it one more time. Laurie Sullivan, and not to be confused with our trustee. Please, would you make your statement?
Absolutely, Mr. Stern, thank you. Hi, everybody, I'm Laurie Sullivan, and I'm running as alongside Mr. Code here for village judge. I welcome any confusion with Laurie Sullivan, trustee. I'm hoping to get at least one vote as a result of that confusion, and heaven knows with all the people he knows in the village, I'm going to need those accidental votes. So if you like her, vote for me, and I'll be a happy woman. Some things you should know about me. I'm your current acting village justice. I was appointed by our wonderful Board of Trustees in 2010, and I have happily served alongside our long presiding village judge, Fred Weinstein, who's been there for the past 17 years. He's been a mentor and a friend, and I have thoroughly enjoyed the 2 years that I have served with him, and I am wholeheartedly hoping for the ability to serve you as the more active full-time judge in the village. I'm an experienced jurist and attorney. As your acting village judge, I regularly preside over civil and criminal matters here in village court. When I'm not doing that, I am a public servant. I have worked for the New York State court system for the past approximately 15 years. I work on a daily basis with litigants right now in the matrimonial part. I listen to people and their daily sagas day in and day out, and that gives me a lot of experience for listening to the long stories about how I got my parking ticket and I shouldn't have to pay it in village court. Sometimes those are much more easy to deal with. I want you to know a little bit more about me. My most important role in life right now is I'm a village resident, but most importantly, I'm a mother. And the child in the audience tonight, Katie, will you stand up? This is my 10-year-old Katie Sullivan. Thank you. She's a 5th grader at the Todd School, and be careful, all of you, she is also a black belt in Taekwondo. So if you don't vote for me, you might have Katie to deal with. She's quite a tough little contender there. in any event, I'm going to keep this short because some of you, or two of you, heard my speech last week, and the 3 people who couldn't sleep at 2 o'clock in the morning heard it after that. But I am hopeful for your vote, and I look forward to continue to serve this community. And thank you for coming out tonight.
Thank you, Mrs. Sullivan, and also for correcting me and calling both of you justices. I didn't realize there was a difference between a judge and a justice, so maybe I'll add that to the questions when we get to you. At this point, we've received a bunch of additional questions from the audience, and we're going to turn to the question and answer section of our presentation, and we will start the questions again with the candidates for mayor and trustee, and then separately with the candidates for village judge, because as I have been told, there are only certain kinds of questions the judges have the ability to respond to. They can only talk about their qualifications and answer specific questions about their position.
You enjoy that role too?
I wish, but I've got a little warning for you. Most of the questions we've gotten from the audience today are directed to Mayor Vescio.
Great.
So
That's fine.
you're getting a load of them.
He's the mayor.
He's the mayor, and I guess that's
you
the
don't
way it
mind,
should
do
be.
you?
Anyway, if I can just find the other questions that, here we go.
Don't struggle for them.
All right. The way we're going to do this is we'll start again with Mayor Vescio and move down through to Mark. You get about 1.5 minutes to respond. And after your responses, if you decide that there's another reply you want to make after you've heard the others, we'll just deduct that time from your closing statements, okay? So the first question we have regards Scarborough Park, and it was submitted by Alan Grant of 23 Beechwood Way. Scarborough Park is slowly but steadily eroding into the Hudson River. I understand a group studied the issue recently and made recommendations to the village, but apparently no action has yet been taken. Does the village intend to address this issue, and if not, why?
Okay, thank you for the question. We have studied Scarborough Park. We put a citizens committee together who came up with recommendations. We hired a consultant to design it, and we have those designs ready to go. We have applied for grants. We received a $400,000 grant that we have to match with $400,000. As with any project, there's a planning stage and then there's an action stage. The intent of the board was to move forward with this, but over the last 2 years, we have been held up with the water project and so many other things that we were finishing up. We do want to use the $400,000, part of it and the matching part, to do the restoration or the riprap to stabilize the banks. That'll be the first stage. We're breaking down the project into various stages. First one will be the stabilization of the shoreline. Second one be the rehabilitation of the park itself. And then lastly, probably a gazebo or a structure that was recommended. There'll be a kayak launching ramp and that kind of thing to make it more usable for the residents. It's our only waterfront in the village. So the answer is yes, we are moving forward, slower than we would have liked to, just like with Chilmark Park. We started that 6 years ago, and that's coming to fruition now. So that's my response.
Thank you, Mayor Vescio. Lori, would you respond to the same question?
Sure. Just in follow-up to Mayor Vescio's response, we have taken substantial action. Often people think that there's no action being taken because you don't see anything. But if you come to the work sessions or when you run into us, ask us, we would be more than happy to tell you what we've been doing all along. As a matter of fact, the Scarborough Park is part of our has been in the plans. There have been two sets of actual plans done, the first set and then revised since then on the recommendation of the committee. We already have authorized $200,000 into our capital plan to help fund the redevelopment of the Scarborough Park. The park's redevelopment, to do it right and really do it right, is going to cost somewhere between $800,000 and $1 million. Because of that cost, we did, as I said, we've already authorized $200,000, and we've done all the legwork to the extent of the plans being in place. We are projecting into our 13-14 capital plan budget an additional $200,000 to the funding. In the meantime, we are continually searching for grants. Most of them require a match. The one that Mayor Vescio referred to, we were very high up in getting it and were approved, but then the money was pulled. There was no money to fund the grant that we had received. So that kind of then backtracked us, because right now in these economic times, a big project like that, there are grants out there, and we are continually searching for them. We are at the top of the list, or right up there, for if these grants get funded, in which case the residents will see see development. But it is something that has been in our radar for as long as I've been on the board. I believe it was in the mayor and Deputy Mayor Vendetti's radar long before. And so be assured, it's not a site in the village that's forgotten.
Thank you very much, Trustee Sullivan. Mr. Wilson, do you have something to add on the subject?
Yeah, just briefly, I think directionally, I certainly agree with the mayor and Trustee Sullivan in what we're accomplishing at the Scarborough Park. I think, though, just a brief comment in general, sort of a philosophical point on significant regional sort of infrastructure investments. I guess from a taxpayer point of view, there are huge amounts of funds that the taxpayers of Briarcliff contribute to Washington, D.C., Albany, and White Plains, far in excess of the services that we receive from those entities. And I think if one travels throughout New York State, as we do upstate, and even in New York City, there's a lot of infrastructure projects that receive significant federal and state funding. And I think Scarborough Park, which has 4 regional aspects, it touches on the Hudson River ecology, the Metro-North train line, flood control, maybe Superstorm Sandy's in the $50 billion is involved there. And with recreation, with the Riverwalk project, I think it really should be eligible for such funding. I think it was a perfect model. That was what was accomplished on the water project, and we should continue with that model to the extent we can. Absolutely.
Thank you. The next question will be for the judge candidates. Our first question is, in your view, what would the impact be from a budgetary perspective, if any, or on the role of village judge from a potential change in our status as a village in the town of Ossining to a coterminous town village? Please.
Well, there are 2 aspects to that question. The first, what would be the impact from a budgetary perspective, I actually think perhaps should be shoved down to the other side of the table, because this is the branch of government that is more involved in setting budgets and to analyze whatever actions are taken in the court, what the budgetary impacts would have would be something that the board and the mayor would have to deal with. But with reference to the second half of the question, which is a very interesting one, what happens to the village justice? It's actually very straightforward. The village law has sections concerning the coterminous idea, and what would happen is very, very straightforward. The town, if we become a town, the town by law has to have 2 judges. We, as a village, have either 2 judges or 1 judge and 1 acting village judge. This is the system we've had forever. I don't know. So what would happen if we made the change was that the sitting village judge would then become a town judge automatically. The acting village judge position would be abolished, and then what would now be a board of supervisors, and the superintendent would appoint the second village judge, the second town judge, and then those 2 town judges going forward would stand for 4-year elections pursuant to the town law.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Code. And Mrs. Sullivan,
Thank you,
would you
Mrs.
respond to that too?
Sure. From a budgetary perspective, again, I'm certainly not the expert at this table on those issues. In looking at what happened in Ossining when they combined the village and the town courts, one can assume that there was additional cost, perhaps to the taxpayers, at least initially, with the addition of yet another judge and the salary and the benefits that would have to go with that. How that would look in Briarcliff, one can assume that with the salary of a second judge, there would be some impact budgetarily. But again, without knowing exactly what the proposition is at this point and how the plan looks, I can't comment with any certainty on that. The other thing I can mention is, while if we became a town and we did have 2 judges, the only thing that I can think of that would be worth mentioning is, there are some legal problems with that proposition. I don't know exactly what's being proposed, but I do know, as the mayor mentioned earlier, that a portion of Briarcliff is actually part of the town of Mount Pleasant and not part of the town of Ossining, which, proposes some legal issues for the town, because purportedly the people who live in the town of Mount Pleasant, unless that was annexed as part of the change in the court system, would be paying for and voting for a judge in a court which they could not participate in unless they became part of Briarcliff proper. So there are some legal issues, there are some challenges in the proposition, and really further comment before, there's a more substantive proposal, I think would be nothing but speculation at this point. But.
Thank you, Mrs. Sullivan. And I'm going to now reverse the order, and I have a follow-up question on this topic, and we'll start it with you, Laurie. Assuming that the coterminous town-village process is delayed, would Briarcliff benefit from reconsidering consolidation with the 2 Ossining court systems, which was previously considered, and I know is part of the studies that are going on in the town of Ossining without the village of Briarcliff? So do you have anything to say on that?
Only that, certainly I'm not an expert in this area. Philosophically, I think it's a lovely idea to combine all of the services together and perhaps have that unity. On the other hand, to have Briarcliff have its own independent judge, I think, is a beneficial thing for the village residents here. It's nice to have our own police department with those resources and quick response times. So I think there's a real benefit in keeping the village as a village and perhaps even making it coterminous with a town. And I think that to try and combine, again, the village with Ossining presents some real legal barriers that would have to be dealt with that really I can't speak to tonight, because I'm not sure how the village is proposing to resolve those legal difficulties first.
Thank you. And Howard, if you would comment on that as well?
Well, there's 2 issues, of course. One is the logistical issue of making the change. The other, of course, is the access to justice change, which I think Judge Sullivan has just sort of touched on. It would be a question of what effect, if any, would it have on our citizens' access to justice if we gave up our village court and just went we would have to go to the Ossining Town Court, of course. There's another interesting logistical thing I was thinking about, though. We're in the process right now of electing a 4-year village justice. To end to disestablish the village court, which of course is an option, and the village can do that with a permissive referendum, I believe. In any case, it would not take effect until the term of the then sitting judge would end, and which we're just doing right now, you see. So as of next month or so, somebody's 4-year term is going to begin. No matter what happens, even if the court is disestablished, the sitting judge cannot be unseated. Otherwise, there would be a way to unseat a judge, and you just get rid of the court. So even if we do that, we still have the court for the next 4 years. Do you see what I'm saying? So from a financial point, it would not benefit the village at all for 4 years. And in 4 years, either I would imagine, I'm just again speculating, the whole issue of whether we're going to become a coterminous village town or not will either be well on its way or not happening. So then we would know at the end of 4 years.
Thank you very much. We'll continue in the same direction. Now we'll go back to the candidates for the village board. Mark, this question you'll take first, please. And this comes from Ken Malik, 333 Elm Road. Pace University's Briarcliff campus has been on the market for a couple of years. The campus operates under a special use permit in a residential zone. What uses do you think are appropriate for that site, and how can and will the village protect the interests of the residents in the area?
Sure, thanks. Let me just comment on sort of a philosophy in approaching these issues. I mean, land use is a key issue in the village and has been since we moved here, with both King's College and the Briar Hall Golf Course being significant matters that were resolved in the 20 years we've been here. I think, again, I'm not aware of a specific proposal, but I think there's a few key considerations that have to be balanced on whatever is brought forward to the trustees and whatever there is to be considered. First off, the impact on the adjacent residents of whatever's proposed. Second, the use of some of the existing open fields, which I know are used now or have been for Little League, and also there's a sort of a soccer, football kind of practice field over there. Third, there are facilities there that we've used for theater and dining, and I think a long time ago, indoor swimming. I don't know if that even exists anymore. And then lastly, and again, as a taxpayer, I think we have to look at what the impact of whatever we agree to, what the impact is on the tax base of the village and the school district. Because again, one of the challenges is to maintain the services of the village, yet keep the taxes low. And part of that is hoping that we keep a tax base that's vibrant and not shrinking.
So any use other than an educational facility or not-for-profit would
Well,
expand the
we'll
tax
have to
base.
see what the specifics are. But those are sort of parameters that I would consider as I was assessing that, yes.
Thank you. Trustee Sullivan?
Thank you. The Pace University Briarcliff campus is in a residential zone. It is there as an educational use based upon a special use permit, and it's a non-transferable permit. The property is on the market, but residents should know that while it's on the market, any closing of this school is probably years away. On behalf of the village, I know the village manager has been in touch with officials at Pace. What they project is it's almost like they're just testing the waters right now, because what my understanding is, or our understanding is that it's a long-term plan that they have to develop the Pace Pleasantville Mount Pleasant site with additional housing for students, go through all the approvals, build it, which they haven't even started, before they could even contemplate closing this campus. So for residents that know it's on the market, I would like to just say it's far down the road. I think it's it's like our capital budget plans. We project out for 5 to 10 years out. So is Pace. Having said that, anyone who has lived through a special use permit process should be aware, and if you're not, be assured, that property is residential zoned. And any contemplation of a use other than in conformity with its zoning for use in every respect would go through heightened scrutiny where every resident could be heard on it. There are public hearings and it's a full process. Yes, as a village, do we see potential opportunity in its redevelopment, whether it's even just conforming single-family residents or whatever it may be that comes before the village, to seize an opportunity to expand our recreational facilities, possibly continue with our commitment to open space and preserve the uniqueness. But we as a board, I don't think we're going to be faced, the board that it would be elected now, that we're going to be faced with any of the issues. But our code and our administration has a process, and nothing's going to happen without them getting anyone that wanted to use a non-conforming, a special use permit.
Thank you. Mayor Vecchio?
Lori pretty much said it all, that it's zoned R40, it's residential, the operator under a special use permit. I attended several meetings with Pace along with the town of Mount Pleasant where they laid out their long-term plans, and it is a long-term plan. They currently have designs or conceptual designs being presented at the town of Mount Pleasant to expand the Pace campus over in Pleasantville, to add, I think, 500 housing units over there and classrooms and redevelop the whole campus. They're still in the DEIS stage of that, and that'll take probably a couple of years before they get approval. And then after that, they would have to build it before anybody moved out of Briarcliff. They do have the property in Briarcliff on the market. They were advertising it as a commercial property, which we told them, no, it's not. You operate under a special use, so that nobody had any misapprehensions or misconceptions when they did buy it, or if they did buy it. There have been several organizations look at it presently. Nothing has been firmed up. They have come to the village to find out what the zoning is. Whatever happens there, it will have to go through either a planning board process or a planning board process and a board of trustees special use process. There will be significant oversight on any development there, and as with any project in Briarcliff, there would be impacts, and we would look to see what the mitigating measures were. So rest assured that the village is on top of it. We are keeping our eye on it, and like I said, there will be a long process for whatever happens there.
Thank you very much, Mayor Vesio. And we'll start the questions again with the village board, and this time we'll start with you, Mark. This question comes from Barry Feathers, 158 Larch Road. What is the status of the village's proposed annexation of the area on North State Road in the town of Ossining, and how does that affect the village's initiative to become a coterminous town village? So this is Districts 17 and 20.
Yeah, again, the exact current status probably is best answered by the mayor and Trustee Sullivan, but let me just add that I do support the efforts to net save money and improve services by making Briarcliff a coterminous town village. The offset of reduction of the current town of Ossining taxes with hopefully a minimal change in village taxes, I think is a benefit to the residents. Also, with respect to the election districts, my understanding is we would probably be able to get better efficiencies and economies of scale if we were able to incorporate those districts prior to becoming a coterminous village and town. The specifics, though, I would turn to my colleagues here as to where it stands legally right now.
Thank you, Mark. Trustee Sullivan?
Well, we could discuss this for a long time, so I'm going to be as short and sweet as I can. The process are separate and distinct. The annexation is a completely separate process than the process to become a coterminous town village. The annexation of Districts 17 and 20 can only do it before we become a town village. We did not seek out these districts. The districts must come to us and to the town and ask us by petition. There's a group that has formed that is driving that part of the train. What we have said to them is we intend to continue to investigate and push forward and do everything we can to see if it's possible to become a coterminous town village. But we will give you a little bit of lead time, because if our train passes yours, you can't do it. You're out. So they're two separate processes, and it's not us doing the annexation. The Village of Briarcliff cannot do it and is not doing it. We have indicated to the residents of 17 and 20 that we as a village, after financial analysis, substantial financial analysis, would be receptive to have them, to annex them and make them a part of the village. But we're not doing it, and we have really nothing to do with it except we've said, we would love to have you. If you can get the vote, if you can do it, great. But do it now, because we're moving forward. When I say that, it seems like we've been talking about this for a couple of elections now, unfortunately, because it's very, very complicated. The biggest problem is we're in two towns. And both towns, we have to basically leave both towns to become our own town village. And it's that process and the laws written against villages, more in favor of towns taking up or subsuming villages, that has made us have to navigate through the state system on a different path than would be simple. But we're doing it. We have reached out to Albany. Mayor Vesio has taken a very active lead in doing that, and told you I could go on and on. I will just say that this board has been very, very committed to that. If there's any way to get rid of the tax inequities and injustice that goes on to all of us, no matter what town you live in, we are doing our best, and we are committed to trying to stop that. All of us are paying the town for services we don't receive.
Thank you, Trustee Sullivan. Unfortunately, there'll be more questions on this subject matter because as a caucus, we have found that this is a topic that is of interest to all of our residents, and the information that they have received thus far about it from the standpoint of the benefits as prepared by Manager Zegarelli are different than those being put forth by the town and village of Ossining, and the town and village have undertaken a study of consolidations and services that they did under a grant, and they've done it without the village. So the caucus would like to be helpful in communicating the information about this process to our residents without taking a position on it.
If I just may, and I know it's let me just make this statement. The town of Ossining has been confused. I'll put it that way. We are not doing the annexation.
I'm aware.
It's their residents who have come together and formed a group and said, would you consider, we've learned the process, how would you like it? Well, our analysis has nothing to do with the town's analysis. We trust our analysis, so if the town wants to say it's otherwise, we don't really care. It really doesn't impact us as a village if the annexation goes through. The town of Ossining would like everyone to believe, I think, that we are somehow in charge of that process. We're not.
Thank you for that clarification. Mayor Vescio, we have 3 minutes left before we have to change the tape, so we can pick this up after that. But
Well, it's quick, brief. First of all, it's not a village proposed annexation. This is an annexation can only occur by the residents that live in a district that want to be annexed into a village, and they have to be in an unincorporated part of a town. Once you become a town, you cannot annex another part of a town. So we become a coterminous town village, they no longer can be annexed in. But it's their train. The only thing that we had to do was evaluate it to make sure it didn't impact our taxpayers negatively, and it also benefited them. It benefits both of us. We did that analysis. Our board said we support it. The town board has to support it or not support it. If there's a difference between the two boards, it'll go up to Albany. There'll be a judicial hearing held to decide whether it should go to referendum. They have the right to vote. The only people that vote on this are the people within the districts of 17 and 20. And it's independent. 2 different train tracks for coterminous town village and for annexation. And if we become a town village first, they're out. I also want to clarify, this has 0 impact on school district lines. School district boundaries are totally separate from this. And some people get confused by that, and I want to clarify that.
thank you. All right, Mayor Vescio, this question is, if we annex parcels 17 and 20, or if the process of annexation takes place, will the impact of the North State Road business taxes reduce our residential tax burden? And I'm just going to add a little complication to that because I'm on the board of the Briarcliff Chamber of Commerce, and I've learned that most of the chamber businesses oppose the annexation process as businesses because they have no say in the taxation process or services. So what can be said to them?
I think the analysis done by the village manager shows that there are tax savings on both ends, more so for the residents that are in 1720 than the residents of Briarcliff. But there are tax savings on both ends because we have an economy of services with the police, the fire, which we already provide, sanitation, et cetera, and the clearing of roads and that kind of thing. So the answer is that it goes down in both areas, more so for the residents within 1720.
Thank you, Mayor Vescio. And we're going to shift back again to the village judge position. And the next question will be directed to Lori first. Could you please explain the duties of the village judge and acting village judge and highlight any important differences? And also, could you please explain why the village justice is elected for a 4-year term when the other positions are 2-year terms.
Absolutely. I'm sorry I interrupted your question
That's all
there.
right.
The village judge is elected for 4 years mainly for the same reason that other elected important offices are elected for a longer period of time, and that's independence of office. You want your village judge to be in office for a longer than a 2-year period of time because you don't want your village judge who sets the tone for the court in terms of impartiality and compassionate service to the public and the people who come before. You don't want that person in any way to feel beholden to the constituency and to be constantly worrying about a reelection campaign because it's a stressful time. You have to go out and get votes when you're an elected official, and that's just something you don't want to have to worry about on a day-to-day basis as someone sitting in as an important a position as the judge in the village. And in terms of the role of the judge versus the acting village judge, the village judge really sets the tone for the town in terms of how to deal with case management on a day-to-day basis. As you know, or many of you know, that the village judge sits on a regular weekly calendar every Wednesday morning. The calendars are divided between civil matters and criminal matters. There are 3 civil calendars a month, which would include things like housing matters, vehicle and traffic matters, summary proceedings, things of that nature, small claims. And then the other day is reserved for the criminal proceedings, arraignments on criminal trials, things of that nature. And the acting village judge serves as a backup to the village judge on any case in which the village judge might have a real conflict of interest, which would prevent him or her from sitting. That person has to recuse themselves. And in that situation, you wouldn't want to have your village residents have to go out to a coexisting town or village in order to get justice. What you have is your acting village judge steps forward and takes the case, unless, of course, that person has the same or similar conflict or reason to have to recuse themselves. The acting village judge is also there in the event of an emergency when the village judge can't sit, if the village judge is on vacation or the village judge is otherwise, engaged in another activity and can't be there. If there has to be an emergency arraignment, then the acting village judge gets called, because if you don't have that redundancy of services, if you don't have a backup, then what happens is the police have to find another village, another town, and get the person there to be arraigned and to move the process forward. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Code if you want to add anything further.
I disagree with all of that. The village, the state law sets a 4-year term. It's in the law. It is one of the several positions that do have a 4-year term. And again, the thinking behind it is for independence of the judiciary. That's a 230-year-old principle of our country, and it filters all the way down to the local courts. As I said, in my years, I was very impressed with the breadth of our jurisdiction. We handle all sorts of matters. We even handle felonies, not handle them, but we handle misdemeanors and violations. But the village court tracks felonies sometimes, while the county court is deciding whether or not to proceed. So sometimes you will see an occasional felony matter not being handled so much as but being followed by the village court. Other than that, there are orders of protection at all hours of the day. Say it again?
And night.
And absolutely, it's a 24-hour job. One thing in the fire department, I learned to get up and dressed in a hurry, so it really helped as acting judge. And it's an important, interesting, challenging post. It really is. But other than that, the details are what they are. Yeah.
Thank you. And I'm going to exercise my prerogative as moderator and ask another question of the village judge candidates. This comes from David Venditti. Do you think that the court can beef up the village's revenues by taking pleas to vehicle and traffic charges for those infractions, where the bulk of the fine money will stay here instead of going to New York State?
That is the kind of
Mr. Code.
Yeah. That is the kind of question that we really are not allowed to answer. Well, I would say there are questions of judicial ethics, unfortunately, that constrain what judicial I'm sorry, Mr. Venditti, you're at constrain what village candidates for village court can say, I would say that, perhaps I speak for Judge Sullivan as well, that we would follow the law and apply the facts in the law as best we could going forward.
I disagree.
Really?
Well, you know, that helps us better understand what a village judge actually can and cannot do, so I'm glad I got that question.
Well, I'm not being disrespectful. We're not allowed to comment on pending or possibly future matters that might appear in front of the court, and an issue of fines and how it, as an aspect of the village budget, perhaps, if that was going, is something that we really
And
shouldn't be commenting.
motivation for ruling on any particular case, you know, we really can't speak to. And if, you know, that motivation be partially financial or as a result of the violation that appears before the judge, it's really not an appropriate subject for us to comment on. So thank you for your question. If you'd like to ask a different question, that would be welcomed. Oh,
Oh, that's for the rest of the board,
duly
okay.
noted.
All right, well, I'm going to switch it up with another question, so. How does the village justice system deal with youthful offenders? And are there any programs in place that are actually administered by the court, or does that fall under another part of the village?
That's me?
Yes, your turn.
Okay. Youthful offender is really a term assigned to a juvenile who gets arrested for what would otherwise be a crime committed by an adult. A youthful offender is a juvenile who gets arrested who falls between the ages of 16 and 18 years of age. And a youthful offender designation is really a service to the child. And it's a service to the child by, instead of going through the process and making a determination of guilt, if you find that this crime was actually committed by this youth, what you would do if you determine that the child is entitled to youthful offender status is you would make a finding that this person is indeed a youthful offender. You would not find them guilty. And by making that finding and imposing a sentence, what would happen is, while the child would serve whatever penalty the judge imposed, that child's record would not become accessible to the public. There are certain limited agencies and purposes for which that conviction, which would in essence be a conviction if it were a person other than someone of that limited age range. But that finding of convicted criminal would not follow that child if the child is granted youthful offender status. And the procedure for obtaining youthful offender status, there's lots of criteria, but the main ones are you haven't been previously convicted of a crime, you haven't previously gotten the youthful offender status, and you haven't committed a violent felony. And if all of those things apply, and you know we have many teenagers who come before the court in Briarcliff, you really do understand that because of the children's immaturity and their age, and for whatever reason they did what they did, you do want to give them that level of protection. You certainly don't want to excuse wrongful conduct and let them have a free ride. On the other hand, we do have an obligation, I think, to make sure that to the extent they know they did something wrong and there is a penalty for that, that we do protect them. And that's what the idea of the youthful offender label is for. There are a couple of programs that we sentence people to in Briarcliff. One has to do with alcohol awareness. And I know that when I get those types of cases, I much prefer finding a community service type of program for the person to do, or a type of community service for the child to do, because I find that all too often dad is willing to write a check. And when dad is willing to write a check, then perhaps the lesson is not learned. So it depends on each case. Each case is individual, but there are programs available. One is called the TASK program, one is an alcohol awareness program, and another one is an alternative to jail sentences. Even if you get the youthful offender status, you are still eligible for a jail term as a minor, ages 16 to 18. And there is one program that I'm aware of which is an alternative to actual incarceration, which I know that we have used in the village on numerous occasions.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Howard, I'm going to give you a choice now. You can either add to that full explanation, or I'm going to give you another question. Which would you like?
I'd like both.
Objection.
Overruled.
I'll remember that.
I just want to add to that very good explanation. The point is to affect the behavior, to give the youth an opportunity with the help of the family to end the behavior, to modify behavior, and yet give the child the freedom to say, as they go through life, that they do not have a criminal record, because they do not. That you can answer that if you have YO status, and the records are sealed, by the way, you can go through life saying truthfully that you do not have a criminal record. The goal, as Judge Sullivan said, is to get the child whatever assistance they need, and at the same time giving them whatever punishment they need. There could be community service through our DPW, perhaps, counseling, an assignment to one of the programs that Judge Sullivan talked about, and the court follows up on a quarterly basis to make sure it's actually happening. It's not enough just to be sentenced. It's also important that they do what the sentence is, so that they realize, and if there's property damage, that restitution is put in place. The parents are involved at every step. And yet it's also handled with sensitivity. The case doesn't appear on the calendar because it's private. Usually the hearings, if whatever there, take place perhaps not in the courtroom, but upstairs or at another location. And the record, as I said, at the end is sealed. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Code.
I'll take the other question now.
We'll hold that for the
Okay,
end.
fine.
We have about 15 or 16 minutes left on our taping and on our scheduled broadcast time, so we're going to try and get some additional questions in that have been submitted by the audience and ask for the answers to be kept brief so we can do this. And Bill, this question was addressed for you. Looking back on the past 8 years, what one or two things would you have done differently if you could do it over? And this question comes from John Reed, 111 Marlborough Road.
What would I do differently?
Yes, sir.
Not run. There's.
That's what Sarah would say.
No, yeah. It's.
No, that's not correct, because he has stepped up to run again.
In all seriousness, it's a journey, and there's very little that I would have done differently. Probably the one thing that I would have promoted more, which we didn't, was when we talked about having 4-year elections for the trustees and mayor. We were told we were not allowed to promote it. That was a huge mistake by not having that go through. And what we were proposing to do was have 4-year terms for the trustee and the mayor run every 2 years, so that you would have a less, the trustees, it takes time to get up to speed. And 4 years, you're there. In 2 years, by the time you're getting up to speed, your term is over. So, we should have promoted that more, and we should have gotten that passed. And that would be the one regret I have. I think everything else, we listened to the people. If they didn't like something we did, well, we changed it. I mean, we had talked about SROs, single room occupancy, to try and address some of this affordable housing. People were against it. We moved on. We found another way. So that would be the one thing.
Do you actually see that far to read these questions? Because you're anticipating them.
No, it's a natural.
All right, this is also for Mayor Vesio. Please tell us more about the affordable housing project on North State Road.
As you know, the county has a settlement for affordable housing where they have to build 750 units over the next 10 years. And the then county executive said it was going to cost $30 million or $60 million, 30 of which was given as a settlement. The lawsuit had nothing to do with affordable housing. It had to do with filing documents by the county with HUD, which were inappropriate or had the wrong numbers. And they turned it into a discrimination lawsuit, an economic discrimination. And the county executive settled. I was very outspoken about the settlement, and I continue to be so to this day. It was wrong, but that was the settlement that was made. The Board of Legislatures approved it. This village had an opportunity to put in place affordable housing at no cost to the village, where we had 16 units built. A developer came to us, the property owner at 445 North State Road. He was looking to demolish the building and put in mixed use. One of our recommendations in the comprehensive plan was to change some of the zones to mixed use where you could have commercial and residential. What we did is we changed that zoning to allow commercial residential. He then applied for a grant through HUD or through this whole affordable housing opportunity to pay for it. It came to the village. He knocked the building down. He's putting in 14 units plus commercial downstairs in the front. The village is not costing the village anything. We get 14 units credit. We're so far ahead of everybody else as far as this game goes. It cost us nothing. It was like a no-brainer.
Thank you, Mayor Vesio. My next question is going to be, would you like time for closing speeches or to take some more questions from the audience? Anybody? Questions. Okay. Thank you. That's what I would have chosen. Mayor Vesio, what would you say is your number one priority going forward as mayor?
I think the number one priority for us is to continue to be creative in the financial end and keeping the taxes down, and at the same time maintaining our quality of services. That's a very difficult task, and contrary to what some people might be promoting, the economy is not getting better. There was a newspaper report today about housing. There was increase and whatnot. I can tell you for a fact that the revenues are going down all across the state. We are seeing less sales tax income, less mortgage tax. If you got less mortgage tax coming in, you don't have as many home sales. So I don't know where these numbers are coming from. So we've had to be creative. As Lori mentioned before, for the past 6 years, we've had our own tax cap that we imposed where we were shooting for 2% on total tax cap. We were creative in finding ways to replace personnel with incentive programs to retire. And we brought in new people. We have a philosophy that if you don't like the job, there's the door. You're not being forced to stay here. And that's kind of blunt and where it's at. We've tried to change the attitude, and we have in the village, of our employees. They work hard, they're dedicated, they love the village, and they do a good job. I mean, collecting the garbage, the streets. Even when Con Edison, with the fiasco of Con Edison, our DPW workers were out there day and night. And we have to give them kudos. And, for that, I think that's a challenge to continue that going forward.
Thank you, Mayor Vesio. And this question I'll pose to Trustee Sullivan. Are there any future plans to make an investment or provide incentives for electric cell, I think this says, charging stations at the train station?
Short and sweet, not to my knowledge. And I'm going to give my question to Mr. Code.
I was just going to say, we can't ask that of Mr. Code, but I will impose that question on Mr. Wilson to see what his thoughts might be about whether that's a proper item for the village to consider.
This is what, charging for electric cars?
I don't know if it's car, I can't read, cell phones, I think I
Cell
read,
phone
yes.
tower.
I said cell, this says cars, that's my eyesight.
Well, I guess philosophically, again, if there was a proposal in front of the village, I guess we'd consider it, but it would not be an economic expenditure I think the village should make. It would have to be somebody who saw an economic opportunity and wanted to make a commercial proposal. I don't think it's the village's role to invest in that. If anyone,
I see a revenue opportunity.
yeah, if it made sense, but yeah.
It's not something that's ever come up, but I can assure you anything that any resident or anything proposed is always vetted and presented both at work sessions, and everything's always open for discussion. It's just nothing, it's never come up before.
Thank you both, all three. And a last question for our judge candidates. And I think, Lori, is it your turn to go first on this one, or is it Howard's?
Yes.
Okay.
Please.
What do you, sir, you can drop, please. I'll call you judge, but you don't have to call me sir.
Fair enough.
What do you see as the hardest part of being a village judge and the easiest part?
That's an easy question. The hardest part of being the village judge is seeing people that you know come into court in difficult situations, and you have to really step back and think, you know, what is my role here? Is my role a friend? Is my role a neighbor? Is my role as one to serve the community? And how will I treat this person? Of course, I'll treat them with respect. Of course, I'll give them absolute full consideration and listen to absolutely everything they have to say in their defense. But at the end of the day, the absolute most difficult part of this job is remembering that you're here to serve the entire community and not just those people that you know and you like. And you also have to take that same reflective step back if you see someone that perhaps is not your favorite person. And in a village of this size, you know, that is a big hazard because we are a small place and, you know, our children all go to the same school and we all live in the same community, and you run into the same faces at the PTA meetings and at the school performances that you often do with the parking tickets and the speeding tickets and the other things that come into village court on a daily basis. And I would have to say the easiest part is the same thing. You get to meet people in the village, you get to meet people from outside of the village, and occasionally if you get one of the youthful offenders that we were talking about or someone who's on the path going the wrong way, you can really play a role in hopefully turning them around and giving them the opportunity to be scared straight almost, you know, letting them understand that while you're going to give them the benefit of having this crime erased from their record, that at the end of the day, you know, you're there to help, and they're going to have to suffer some penalty. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Laurie. And Howard?
I would say something similar as to the hardest part. The uniqueness of the village court is that you do all of your serving where you live, and you do it with people that you know, that your children have grown up with, and you have to make some very difficult decisions sometimes, some that perhaps you don't like to do, but you know you're doing the right thing for the person and the village. So I agree with Judge Sullivan on that. The easiest part is when it works out, when you have people in front of you and they both walk out thinking that justice has been done. They're both satisfied with the result. You know, the courts have always been the great safety valve of our democracy. This is where people can come and think that they really believe and find out that they really do have a say in what's going on. They really can participate, and they are equal to everybody else. And to get a situation where you can make everybody who's in front of you understand that and realize that they are participating and that the courts work, that is incredibly satisfying.
Thank you, everybody. I'm going to start to take actions to make some final announcements before we seek a motion to adjourn the meeting. So. The taping will be shown on Cablevision Channel 15 on Saturday the 19th at 3:30 p.m., Sunday the 20th at 1 p.m., Monday the 21st at 8:30 a.m., and Tuesday the 22nd at 11 p.m. We have left a hat at the back of the room for those of you who didn't have an opportunity to make a contribution to the caucus at the last meeting. It's there if you would care to. Final announcement from me is that, reminder, the election is the 23rd from 3 to 9 p.m. We hope you will all come out to vote. And now I'll ask if anybody has any other business that they'd like to bring before the caucus. Yes.
As the mayor and trustee is uncontested, are you going to cast the vote tonight?
You are absolutely correct.
Thank
We
you.
did read a resolution earlier, and it was approved, so you have received the caucus's endorsement for the nominations, and I apologize for not being clearer on that.
Can you also give us the time frame for the petitions?
Yes, the petitions will be made available on the 24th after the tally from the election is counted, and we are happy to distribute them as long as you've provided us with your email address and addresses. We will get them out to you. So thank you for that. Any other business? Then I'm going to, there being no other business, I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting. Yeah, you can make a motion. And do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.